we're going to say today, that the sound of language, which means the structurist approach, the structurist approach, and we will study the Bloomfieldian approach. The Bloomfieldian approach, which means, as we know, that structuralism flourished in America with Bloomfield, especially in the 1933, which means the beginning of 30s. And the main questions that the structuralists ask are three main questions. What are the sounds of language? How are they phonetically realized? And how are they distributed? Which means the sounds, what are the sounds that exist in the language? How are they pronounced? Does the context where they occur affect their pronunciation? These are the main questions that the structurist asks. In order to determine the sound of a language, that is, the structures follow certain guidelines, and among these guidelines, that is, they want to study the data of the corpus, and the corpus is larger than the data. But whatever, because they base on observation, they have to analyze every single category in the data. That is, and as I will keep saying, that in order to analyze the data or to analyze the language, that is, you have to see the sound, which means the segment, and the sequence of the segment, which means where, that is exactly where the sound occurs, if it is followed or preceded by certain sounds. These are very crucial in analyzing the data as far as structurist approach, and it is added for the generativist approach, because the structurist approach cannot account for all the elements that exist in the language. Their theory was proven inadequate. That's why the generativist approach came as a reaction against the structurist by the publication of the verbal behavior by the Skinner. And they add a new thing, which is what we call processes, because processes, they add certain things to the certain sounds are added, because there are certain kind of two levels, which means the abstract level and surface level, which the structurist approach do not believe in. They believe in their studies. Their objective is to study the observable data, which means the surface structure. Though they know that in language the underlying representation exists, the abstract level exists, but they do not account for this. That is what they say. What we see, we can account for it. What we don't see, we cannot account for it. We cannot study it. For example, if we take the example, the data here, that is, look at the sound, the repeated sound that exists in this data. You have the sound, look at the sound, the column here, a column here, and the column here. You have a play, spray, capsule. You have pot, pour, pill. You have kept, hopped, slept. And here you have in this, you have a p occurs. Look at this one. The sound of p occurs here between two square brackets, because it is narrow transcription, not a broad transcription. If it is a broad transcription, it is between slanted bars. But here in the analysis, it's gonna be different. That is a play here. You have a p in initial position. Look at this one. Initial position followed by l, which means the initial position. I'm using phonological jargon. Here you have p between preceded by s followed by r. You have here capsule preceded by a, followed by s. Look at the column here. The column here you have p aspirated in initial position. You have to look in every single detail. But you will ask, Madam, please, here it's initial position, but it is not aspirated. Look at the sequence. I said the segment and the sequence, the syntagmatic order, the sequence of the sound. That is a p which is aspirated is found, it is immediately followed by the vowel. And the vowel here, it's a monosyllabic word, and the vowel is, that is the stress here is predictable. All monosyllabic sound, all monosyllabic words, the stress is predictable. Though in English, stress is distinctive, but here it is predictable because they have the only vowel in the word, in the syllable, and the stress falls on that vowel. That's why it creates certain aspiration, whereas here del p occurs in initial position, but it is not aspirated because it is followed by le. That is, the sequence is very important. And here you have, if it is, look at this one, p aspirated, immediate, they are monosyllabic words. And here the stress is predictable, it follows on the vowel, either, and the diphthong is considered as one vowel. Therefore, here, once you have a stress, it creates, it spreads, is aspiration that is stressed on the preceding sound. And the sound here, which is voiceless consonant, is aspirated in initial position, followed by a vowel. Automatically, it is stressed. Therefore, here the rule is predictable. Compared to this column, the rule also is predictable. Look at this one. The p, which is under release. Why unreleased? Because you have syntagmatic ordering of the segment. The air is not released because of juxtaposed position, juxtaposed consonant, which are both of them stops. And the air is blocked. That's why kept. That is that the p is unreleased. Hopped. That is, you feel that you have certain thing in your vocal tract that is preventing you from releasing the air. Stepped. Therefore, here, that is, if we take this one, that is here, that is the rule is predictable. The rule is predictable. This one, the rule is not predictable because here p, that is, we call this p is plain p. P sometimes occur in initial position, sometimes between s and r, between consonants, sometimes between vowel and consonant. If we have larger data, we can come up with more information about this one. That's why here you have p here is the rule is not predictable, is unpredictable. Therefore, we can find wherever you can go, you can find p. Therefore, the p is found in all contexts except the initial position, which is followed by a vowel, or except in final position followed by a stop. That is, in all position except this position. That's why if we say, that is, using the simple technique of observation, we notice that English has 3 types of phone sound, which means the phone, or these are called either phones or phonemes or sounds. But the term we use phonemes or sounds, each of which occurs in an environment where the others do not. That is, if you find plain you can find this everywhere except in initial position followed by a vowel which is stressed, except in p followed by consonant and the p which is unreleased. Which means this one, that is, you cannot find the p in a position aspirated in the same place. It's impossible. You cannot aspirate this one. It's impossible because the vowel which creates this aspiration. Therefore, at the beginning of the word, followed by a vowel, p occurs before consonant, at the end, etc. Plain p occurs in context other than those of p aspirated and unreleased. The occurrence of these phones then is totally predictable. This one is predictable. You can predict its occurrence. Where you say, when do we have per aspirated? Per aspirated, we find it in initial position followed by a vowel, final position followed by a consonant, which is a consonant stop. And this one in S-word position in all contexts other than these contexts. And here it does not show that it creates certain contrast in meaning. Either you say, if you utter the sound, the word part or party with aspirated without aspiration, it doesn't mean anything. But it means that it does not affect the meaning. Therefore, it shows that you have a certain accent, and it tells us that you are not a native speaker of English, you are a foreigner. But this one, it is not distinctive. It is not does not show show contrast in language. That is, for example, here another per aspirate does not lead to a different word meaning, which means it does not affect. I pronouncing the word party without aspiration accompanying per does not make it does not make you think of another word meaning, which means does not affect the meaning. It gives information about the speaker, that you are a foreigner. That is, you have an accent about the language. You are not a speaker. That is, the different pronunciations in English are not distinctive or contrastive. It's not distinctive, contrastive, because it does not affect the meaning. It does not change the meaning. Whereas in other contexts, that is, we will see. In other contexts, that is, we'll see. In other contexts, that you change the sound with another sound, it affects the meaning. And therefore, we will study what we call certain method that Bloomfield provided us, thanks to him, that he provides the distribution of sound. And amongst those methods or procedures that he called them, are called the discovery procedure. And among the discovery procedure are 5. You have minimal pairs, you have overlapping distribution, you have free variation, you have defective distribution, and you have complementary distribution. And the one which you can analyze the data in is complementary distribution. But the other 4, that is, if you find one element on it, you stop analyzing the data. We'll see that. On the other hand, if you replace a p with a b in the same phonetic environment, that is, p, like for example, pit, and that is, you have the same elements are in all contexts except one. In all frame, in all contexts or frame, except one, which is a p, p and the p. And this one, you p and the p and the p, it affects the meaning. Therefore, p and the p here, but here p is if we compare p to b, that is, they have the same place of articulation, manner of articulation, but they are different in terms of voicing. In terms of voice, here we call that that voice in English, or talking about English, is lexically information bearing. What do we mean by lexically information bearing? Because it bears certain information that affect the lexicon. That's why voice in English, according to the data, I'm not talking about this one. You can find, if we have larger data, you can come up with a certain element that can certain sound that they have a certain thing in common. But in voice, I'm using the structures approach. What I see, that is here, voice in English in this data, pit and bit, that they differ in terms of voice, and therefore they affect the meaning. Therefore, it is lexical information bearing, because it affects the meaning bearing. And for example, aspiration, it does not affect the meaning, but either you use you say you produce it with aspiration, without aspiration, it tells us that you are a foreigner. That's it. But this one, what you call, is redundant. That is here. Therefore, the voice in English is lexically information bearing, whereas while aspiration is not, it is redundant. That is, here the structuralists assume 2 types of sound inventory. 2 types. One is the basic, And the other one, which means the fundamental sound, that is the fundamental sound. From that fundamental sound, the basic sound, some other sounds are derived, some other images are derived from the basic sound. And the variant of those basic sound or fundamental sound are called, that is variants, that is which allows, that is those variants, those images, it's the context that allows us to mention, to say that those are the variants of some phoneme, of the same phoneme. For example, if you have a p, plain p aspirated and released, are the variants, that is you have in, if you for example if you say party and party, or if you say peel, or you say play, etc., what you find in dictionary, you find the p. But here you have the p, plain p, sometimes are variants of the basic phoneme, the original phoneme, the systemic phoneme, or the basic phoneme. But the others are the variants, which mean the images, that is which allows us to say this is the context. That is, in certain contexts, the p, which is the plain, is pronoun aspirated. Why? Because it is immediately followed by a vowel, and the vowel is stressed. The plain p is pronounced as unreleased because the air is not released because of successive consonant, juxtaposed consonants, concatenative consonant. And these are called variants. That is, sometimes you pronounce it as a plain, normal, sometimes as aspirated in certain contexts, and sometimes is unreleased. These are called allophones, and these allophones of the same phoneme, because these allophones of the same phoneme. Therefore, if we want to analyze this one, we have to find out, according to structurist approach, of course, they have to analyze two, that is, they set up with two criteria. Those criteria are the frequency and markedness. What do we mean by markedness? Markedness is done with the universalist approach, also in language acquisition. And then the rule of markedness says that it is composed of two elements, the core and the periphery. The core is the basic, is the normal. The periphery is the additive element to it, and the core is the less marked, which is unmarked. Whereas the periphery, the other elements that added to the core, is bear what we call certain features, certain added element, which is they are marked. Therefore, here p is unmarked. It does not add any element to it. You don't add any element to it. Whereas a p here aspirated, it is more marked. If you compare this one and this one is the least marked, and the others are the more marked, which means because they bear certain things on the top of them. That's why we have, that is, the one which bears the least marks is the basic phoneme that you find it, is the lexical phoneme that you find it in the lexicon, whereas the whole are allophones, the variant, because the context where they occur creates certain, that is, added element to it. That's why you have p plain p and the p aspirated and the p unreleased. They are allophones of the same phoneme. And in order to say which one is the basic phoneme, we need two criteria: markedness and frequency. For example, look at this one, the data here. That is, here the rule is predictable. The rule is predictable. Here you cannot determine, it's unpredictable. You cannot determine each place. Wherever you can find the plain p. Therefore, since it is highly frequent, it is given the highest frequency, it is the basic phoneme, the lexical phoneme. Therefore, the plain p is the basic phoneme through the use of that is the basic phoneme or the lexicon phoneme. If you open a dictionary, you can find this one, p, plain p, and you cannot find aspirated or n release with this diacritics. It's impossible. Therefore, the p is a basic phoneme or the systemic phoneme or the phonemic phoneme or the original phoneme or the basic phoneme. And the basic phoneme, it is written as between slanted bars. And we will see in formal notation while analyzing the data. And here you can say that the P, which is the basic phoneme, is realized as 3 variant allophones because the context which allows this one, different pronunciation or different phonetic realization, which means different pronunciation. And therefore you have P and the P are phonemes, whereas P aspirated, P plain, and the P aspirated, the P and the release are allophones, and the B are different phonemes. They are completely different, but here the same phoneme, similar, that is variant of the same phoneme. They vary images. Since they are images, because the context which allows this, we call them allophones. Therefore, P, plain P, P aspirated, and the release P are called allophones of the same basic phoneme, which is a P, which is we can find it in all position and at the same time in all position and at the same time its rule is not, its environment is not predictable, whereas here is predictable, and you cannot determine its environment. And wherever you go, you can find the P. That is, we call it that you can find this in all contexts. And this one is, we can say that a plain P occurs in elsewhere position. We will see it in elsewhere position. Now, to determine this environment, the distribution of this sound, that is Bloomfield discovered what we call certain method to analyze the distribution of sounds or distribution of sound. He produced us with certain what we call a discovery procedure, and I said that there are 5 among them. That is in order to specify the sound change of language and the sound change of language and its environment which allows this. And among this, there are 5. You have minimal pair techniques, you have free variation, we have overlapping distribution, and you have defective distribution and complementary distribution. And you have the structures develop a set of discovery procedures that apply to any corpus. And this one, discovery procedure, you can apply to any corpus, any language, either Moroccan Arabic, Japanese, any language. It is applicable to all languages in order to specify the sound structure of a language, even when the analyst does not know that language. And then, if you don't know, if you have a hypothetical language, you can analyze this by using this discovery procedure. This procedure operates very much like an algorithm along the following lines. It is like that's why we explain that language is linguistics is the scientific side of language, because we opt from science certain ways, certain methods to analyze language. And among those procedures, we can start with the minimal pairs. What is a minimal pair? Minimal pair, you have if we take pit and bit, they are, for example, here you have pit, bit, and pit, par and bar, kalb and qalb, cap and cap, tu and du, katab and kazab. Look at this one. You have b and the p. They are similar in all environments except in p. They are similar in all except b and the p. They are similar in all elements except qa and k. Similar cap. They are similar except p and p. They are similar except tuddu. And they are katab and kazab. They are still, you have ka, you have ab, but they are different in terms of them, which means they are similar in all environments except one. and they change the meaning. Therefore, they are called minimal pairs. The phones which difference word meanings in the same phonetic context or frame are said to constitute a minimal pair. That is, they are similar in all contexts except one, and they affect the meaning. They are called minimal pairs. And you have, if you find, when you analyze the data and you find minimal pairs, you stop analyzing the data. For example, you have in English, etc. are Arabic make up minimal pairs, and you stop the data. You stop analyzing data. You cannot go analyze. When do you analyze the data? When it is the sounds are in complementary distribution, and the sounds are suspicious sound. What do we mean by suspicious sound? They are phonetically similar. They are pronouns. They are phonetically similar, which means they have the same either place of articulation, manner of articulation, or they interact in phonological. You can replace one another in phonological processes. That is a pair, you drop it, and then you replace it by the in phonological interaction with a process found in human language. And here, if we can say that is suspicious pairs, you go to suspicious pairs. What are they? Here, suspicious pairs are the sounds that are phonetically similar in language. They are phonetically similar, which means you have the same place of articulation, manner of articulation. They have certain in common, at least for two. That is, if they are dissimilar, they are different phonemes. In phonemic analysis, pairs such as z and qa are never considered as phonemic analysis in order to find out whether they are phonemes or allophones, which means these are, that is completely different. If we take the p, bam, this is because why? They are obviously different phonemes since they differ in both points of articulation and manner of articulation. That is, we simply assume that they are phonemically distinct. If they are different in points of articulation, manner of articulation, they are phonemically different, therefore they are different phonemes. But if we take p, bam, if we these form suspicious triplet, but I can use, for example, p and b are suspicious pairs because they have the same place of articulation, points of articulation, or that is same manner of articulation, but they differ in voicing. If we take p and m compared to that p and b, they are not more likely to be considered as suspicious pair because they have only one point of article bilabiality. If we consider b and m, they are more likely to be considered as suspicious pairs because b and m are bilabials, voice, and except in manner of articulation. That is, all of them are labials. The set p and the p is more likely to be an obvious suspicious pair than p and the m. This is because p and the b differs only in one feature voice, whereas p and m differ with respect to feature voice, stop, and nasality, which means manner of articulation and the place of articulation and voicing. Is that clear? This does not mean they differ in terms of manner of articulation and voicing. This does not mean that p and m can never count as suspicious pair. They may very well be, as long as they are not found to be contrast in the language understanding. If they don't find the contrast, that is, they don't find in contrast with in language, that is, you can consider as suspicious pairs. And here, but there are certain, that is a suspicious pair, but sometimes the sound, the point of articulation is indicate that is there are certain sounds, especially nasal sounds, if they are in syntagmatic order with the vowel, that is the vowel takes the feature of the nasality, especially in French. That is, what you can transcribe it by using some symbol on the vowel, like on, That is, the is not written. That is, it's the vowel which keeps this one. That's why for this you have to pay attention to this, because a word of caution is in order here, because it is considered as two consonants having taken one sound, taken the feature of the neighborhood of consonant. This is this is the main element of suspicious pairs. Suspicious pairs, especially having the same place of articulation, point of articulation, and manner of articulation. That is, if the two sounds are called suspicious pairs, which means they have the same place of articulation, point of articulation, and manner of articulation. Go back to our to the data. Yes, discovery procedure. And among the discovery procedure that is here, you have a bit and bit. That is here, you have katab and kadab. That is, they are minimal, and you stop analyzing. You stop analyzing this. And in each set, the substitution of one member of the set of the other change the meaning. Therefore, once a minimal pair is found in a corpus, the sound involved are characterized as two different phonemes. Once you cannot talk about suspicious pairs, because the two pairs are considered as different phonemes. Therefore, you cannot analyze them. Similarly to the vowel e, a, o. That is, they are similar in all contexts except the one which is in the middle. That is, and it gives the contrast in meaning. Therefore, e, a, o are different phonemes. They are not the same phoneme. They are not allophones. Therefore, they are different phonemes. Once they are different phonemes, they are different sounds. They are different segments. Therefore, you stop analyzing the data. When we analyze the data, if and only if they are in complementary distribution and we have suspicious pairs, that is, they have a certain points of same place of articulation and manner of articulation, that as you have their variance. Overlapping distribution. What do we mean by overlapping distribution? Overlapping distribution, they occur in the same context, but not in the same frame. What do we mean by the same context? That is, they are they have the same environment, the same context, but they resemble, they are not the same in all contexts, in all frame, that is, in all contexts, and they don't have a minimal pair. Look at this one. And they are what we call overlapping parallel distribution. Look at this one. You have, like for example here, you have to read the glossary. You have to read the glossary and the related this one. You have عنب, you have ka, or loose temper, you have ba, you have صبغ, you have غبر, and you have بغى. Look at this one. We considered and in Arabic, and we assume that and are suspicious pairs. And we will analyze this data. But here, and look at this one, and we look at the whole data. Ba and صبغ. Look at this one. Ba and صبغ. They occur in the same context, but they are not similar here. But minimal pair, that is, they are similar all in except one. For overlapping, they occur in the same environments, but they are not similar in all elements. عنب, غبر. Look at this one. Occur in initial position, but they are not similar here. كا وبغى. Here, they have the same environment, but they are not similar. Look at this one. They have the same environment. They are similar in this one, but they are not similar here. Are you following? Are you following?
Yes, Prof.
Therefore,
Yes,
and the gha are in overlapping distribution. The overlapping distribution differ from minimal pairs. That is, the minimal pairs, they have the same environment. They are the same except in one, and the contrast meaning. Here, they are the same in the environment, but other elements are not the same. Is that clear? And this one, they overlap the place, the context where they occur, they overlap, which means here initial position, but here you have and occur in initial position, but other elements they don't resemble each other. صبغ and ba and occur in a final position, but you have sb and you have ba and you have ka and bra. Here you have the same occur in medial position, but they are not the same. Therefore, and are all in overlapping distribution. The phoneme and do not involve minimal pair, nor do they occur in same context. Is that clear? Rather, they both occur in initial position, final position, or before they occur in the same environment, though not in exactly the same phonetic frame. This overlapping distribution occur in parallel, analogous. It's قياسيا, it's analogous context. They say that they overlap the same environment, etc., the same context, etc. But it is analogous. It's held by the structures to be a context of contrast. They assume that if the corpus data, the corpus were larger, we can come up with the minimal pair. Look at this one, غار and عار. Here, غار and عار, you have the same context, the same environment, and the same elements after the environment. They resemble each other except in one, and they create minimal pair, different meaning, contrast in meaning. Therefore, this one, عار and غار, are minimal pair, and غ and two different phonemes. That is, if they contrast, they are different phonemes. If they overlap, they are different phonemes. Free variation. Free variation, they are phonetically similar, which means the same, and that is the pronunciation, the realization are the difference, which means they are allophones of the same phoneme. Either you say, for example, and they do not affect the meaning. They don't affect the meaning. Either you say, for example, قال and قال, qa and the ga are not, they are allophones. If you say qa and the ga, that is originally qa is the original phoneme, whereas the ga is the variant, is allophones, and they do not affect the meaning. Therefore, the pronunciation, it depends on the choice of the speaker. Either he uses or she uses to use qa instead of the ga, or the other way around. Here you have in American English or British English for the conjunction subordinator, which is either, neither, they pronounce it as either and neither. For British English is pronounced as a diphthong, whereas American English is pronounced as a long E, either, neither. This one, and substitution I with E does not affect the meaning. Therefore, these two diphthongs are said to be in free variance in corpus that does not contrast, which means does not affect the meaning. Consider the hypothetical, look at this one, the hypothetical language here below in 2-4. You have that is the se and the z. Se and the z, that is, they form suspicious pairs. Why suspicious pairs? That is, they are both fricative, and both having the same point of articulation. They differ in terms of voicing. Se is an alveolar, z is an alveolar. Se is a fricative, z is fricative. Se is voiceless, and the other one is voiced, which means they form suspicious pairs. Therefore, I want to analyze the data and to see. That is, but without forgetting to look at the gloss. Look at this one, Z tone and C tone. You have boy, the same as and faz. You have the same meaning, into, nizu and nisu, into and in. This one you have a se and z occur within the same frame. Look at this one. Boy, the initial position, se in position. That is final position between two vowels. The same frame, the same context, and without changing, without affecting the meaning. And more specifically, the choice of the speaker. That is, the speakers of this language use S and Z interchangeably. This sound of variation, that is, this is a variation, is not information bearing. It's not like that. It's not like the minimal pair. The minimum pi contrast is lexically information bearing, but here it's not information bearing. It does not lead to any change of lexical meaning. Phones use, that is, this one is the variance, is the choice of the speaker. They use it interchangeably. Therefore, they are allophones. That is, you vary. What do we mean by allophones? Are variants depending on the context. That is, either I the so or the, they mean the same thing. Similarly in Arabic, for example, qal and gal, qad and qad. Some people would say qad, some people would say qad. Some people, that is qa and gal. They are used interchangeably, which means they are allophones of the same phoneme, basic phoneme, because the qa is the basic because you find it in Arabic, whereas the ga is a variant, mainly spoken by the people of the same community, but it differs from one person to another person. It's a kind of choice. Now, complementary distribution. Complementary distribution, as I said, that is, you have for the data that I said, the P, plain P, and the P, and aspirated P, and which is unreleased. What do I mean by complementary distribution? Which is mutually exclusive context, which means mutually exclusive context, which means that is you find that is the plain play exclusively in one context rather than the others. That is, if you find one, you cannot find the others. One occurring in a context where the other can never occur, which means if you find the plain P, you cannot find you can neither find the page P aspirated or unreleased. It's impossible. That is, one occurs, the others cannot occur, etc. And this one we call it mutually exclusive environment context, or they are in complementary distribution. That they complement each other in their context. Therefore, they are mutually exclusive environment. And here you have, they are said to be in complementary distribution. They are normally they have here they are allophones. That is, they are variants of the basic phoneme, and the basic phoneme, which means the systemic phoneme. The systemic phoneme, which means, as I said, you have two criteria discovered by the structuralist in order to, and you can find only one criterion that you can account for, that if the sound is the basic sound or the derived one. And among those criteria are two, frequency and markedness. But another example is taken from writing alphabetic, that is alphabetic writing scripts, that is in which you have capital letters with small case letters. Small case letters, you can find them everywhere in the text, whereas capital letters can be used only in at the beginning or after period, if and only if the names are not proper names, because proper names you can use capital letters inside the paragraph, but for certain students they can write capital letters wherever they want, and especially you can cut the word wherever they want. And we will see in syllable structure, that is where we can cut the word, deconstruct the word. You cannot deconstruct the word wherever you want. It's impossible. That is, if you, for example, if you have to use that is, you end up your line with the Patricia, and then you write Patri, and then you move on to the other side. For me, it's wrong, minus 0.25, because you did not respect the syllabification. Is that clear? Because you cannot cut the word wherever, deconstruct the word wherever. There are certain regulations, and these regulations we will see next week in syllable structure. And here you have similar to this one. That is, in alphabetic writing scripts, capital letters such as le or p occur exclusively at the beginning of a paragraph after full stop. This is a rule. In a text, that does not mean, like for example, AM, 10 AM. AM, you have A. period, M period, if and only if you are using the 10 space A small case letter, period, M period, if and only if you are using American British system of writing. If you are adopting the American, that is, you have 11, and then there is no space after M, and period, M without a period. That is, this is American. Here we have the same. There are certain systems, certain regulations. And here you have that is small case letters like the P occur everywhere, which means you look everywhere, which means in answer position. Therefore, the basic form, high frequency of this one is le, and the P are the highest. That is the highest frequency. That is, they are given the highest frequency, which means they are the basic phonemes, whereas capital letter, etc., their environment is predictable. You can find it. It's a rule. You can find it either at the beginning of the paragraph, or at the beginning of the sentence, or after a period. This is a rule. Therefore, the L capital letter and the P capital letter are the derived of the L, which is small case letter, etc. And this is a rule, and therefore we can say capital letter and are in complementary distribution, because where you find L and the P, you cannot find L small case letter. It's impossible. Defective distribution. There are exceptions in rule. Defective distribution are sounds that are in complementary distribution. That is complementary distribution where you can find someone and some sound, and you cannot find the other sound in a context, but though they don't form suspicious pairs. For example, and this distribution is defective. There are certain defects in their distribution, because in English, for example, in English you have the sound and the velar nasal n. That is, velar nasal n. It's impossible to find it at the beginning of the word. It's impossible. Similarly to her, it's impossible to find this at the end of the word. In English, I'm talking about English. You can find this in other language. I'm using structured applause. That is, all the time, the he, you begin the word with the he in English, and it is put in at the end. Like, for example, two phones that consistently occur in complement are considered allophones of the same phoneme, provided that their pronunciation is similar in terms of points of articulation, manner of articulation. This is complementary distribution. But we have a certain counterparts, certain exceptions. They are regarded as phoneme, though they occur in mutually exclusive contexts. For example, look at this one. Here you have her, who, him. That is, the phones ha and the na in English never occur in the same context. This one initial position, this one in final position. Always occur in word initial position, na also occur in final. However, we cannot claim they are in complementary distribution, hence they are allophones. That is, we cannot claim that they are in complementary, because the crucial criterion of allophonic variation is phonetic similarity. But we cannot say that they are in complementary distribution. They are in defective. When we are talking about complementary distribution, we are talking about complementary distribution if they are suspicious pairs and they have the same points of articulation, manner of articulation. These are complementary distribution. But since though they occur in different environments, we cannot, because they are not similar, phonetic similar. They don't have a phonetic similarity. That is, they don't resemble each other in point of articulation, manner of articulation. These are called defective. They are in defective distribution. That is, allophones must be phonetically say he and n have totally different points and manners of articulation. Therefore, they are different phonemes. He and n are different, completely different. They are not in complementary distribution because they have neither point of articulation similar nor manner of articulation, and therefore they are different phonemes. Two phones that are phonetically dissimilar and occur in mutually exclusive environments. They are in different environments. In other words, between two inverted commas, which means mutually inclusive environments, are said to be in defective distribution. They are phonemes, but they are not considered in the phonemic analysis in a given case. They are phonemes, different phonemes, and they are not, and you cannot analyze them. It's impossible, which is impossible because they don't have certain thing in common. They are not suspicious pairs, and therefore they are called in this defective distribution. Basic and derived phonemes. Basic and derived phones, which means I said that you have frequency and markedness. A legitimate question, that is this one clarification about what I have already said. A legitimate question to ask at this point is the following. Aspirate and are variants of the same phoneme in English. They are all allophones, which one of them is the basic lexical original phonemic systemic sound from which the other are derived, which means this one, that is the plain aspirated and released, are the derived of the basic phoneme, which we can call either lexical original phonemic systemic, because systemic, it is follow the system, it cannot vary, which is it's not variant, but the variant is the derived one, and the structure is used to criteria to determine the phonemic status of sound, frequency and markedness along the following lines. Frequency. Using observation, we realize that aspirated p occurs only before vowels, and the and the release occurs only either in word final position or before consonant in word final. Plain p occurs in all contexts other than, because this one is unpredictable. Their position in environment is unpredictable, whereas it's predictable. Others is predictable. Other than those of p aspirated and p unreal, a large corpus would reveal that plain p has a wide range of context, which means wide range of context in English, which means it can occur everywhere. It can occur wherever you go. We can find the plain p, whereas p aspirated and p and release, they have a special environment where they occur, which means their occurrence is predictable. It has wide frequency, that is plain p. Plain p has a wide frequency of occurrence, which occur in a rather limited, restricted, limited, which means predictable. The phone that enjoy the highest frequency of occurrence is the basic phoneme or the lexical phoneme, the systemic. That is, whatever books you can read, you can find the same terminology. That is, if it is basic, it is lexical, it is the phonemic, it is the original, it is the systemic. While the other members of the set are the derived phones. The other sets, that is aspirated and released and plain, are the derived ones, which means are the variants, are the allophones. Therefore, the p in English is the basic phonemes, whereas p and the p are derived phones, which means the p are it is in elsewhere position, whereas the p aspirated is before in initial position, followed by a vowel, and the vowel must be stressed. And the p, it is in final position, and these p and the p aspirated and the p and release are called variants of the same basic phoneme, which is the p. And the basic phoneme, it is written between slanted bars, whereas allophones, the variant, is written between square brackets. Markedness. The criteria of markedness dictates that the basic sound is the phone bearing the fewer or the fewest phonetic feature, added elements to it, compared to the other in the allophonic group. Conversely, the sounds which are marked for more features are derived. A look at the set p plain, p aspirated, and p and we receive that p is the least mark. This one is the least mark. It is not added. You don't have additive element to it. Whereas here you have additive elements, which mean diacritics, which means that is the p aspirated and the p and release are given more information than the p plain plain P. But the plain P occurs wide the range of occurrence. That is, you can find it everywhere. Therefore, it is in elsewhere position. Whereas here, they are their occurrence is predictable. This one initial position followed by vowel stress. Whereas here and release, it occurs in final position. And this one, its occurrence is the context is not predictable. That's where we cannot have predict the context. Therefore, we can say that the plain P occurs in elsewhere position. Reveals that P is the least marked because it contains neither aspiration nor releaselessness. Therefore, a P is a basic, while P, etc. are the right. And you can have only one criterion, either the markedness or frequency to determine the basic phoneme. If sometimes you can find both of them, sometimes you can find only one. You can find markedness, and sometimes you can find only high frequency. That is frequency. How to analyze the data? Steps to phonemic data analysis. That is the difference between corpus. The corpus is larger than data, by the way. In the analysis of the sound system of language can be seen along the following line. To analyze the language with a view to determine its sound system. That is, why do linguists or phonologists want to analyze the language? In order to determine its sound system. That is the system of the distribution of sound. That is, certain sound occur in certain contexts. They have different pronunciation, different realization, but others. In order to have this thing, that is the linguist, that is the procedure that you have to do is to collect the data corpus. Why to collect the data from natural context in order to have a reliable and valid result and adequate results. Reliable, valid, adequate result. In order to apply this, that is, once you find the adequate result, a reliable result, a valid result, you can apply it to all languages that exist in all languages. And here, and also to verify the distributions of the sound and its variation. And you come up with certain rules, like the neo-grammarians, in order to compare. That is, for comparativists, that is, they compare languages to find the certain regularities that exist among languages and to make it common, and they group languages into families, and they serve linguistics. Of course, they serve linguistics by grouping certain languages. For the first time, they call themselves European languages, family European languages, proto-family European languages, and they add Indo-European languages because you have the Indian, the Panini Sanskrit. He added new things to linguistics, and we are still using the Panini's work bank. We will see it, especially it affects morphology, and morphology affects phonology, of course, in the study of morphophonemics. And this one, and in order, that is, once this corpus is available to the linguist, sampling process follows to select the speech forms that contain data by recording, etc. And the material collected through this sampling is called data. And to determine whether, that is, in order to analyze this, we need to follow certain steps. And the first step is suspicious pairs, suspicious sets of sound. Suspicious sets of sound in a corpus constitute either phonemes or allophones. That is, here it is used in plain English, but this one is used in schemata form. That is, look at this one. If you have a data, suppose that you have data and to analyze it. The first, and then you have sets of pairs, suspicious pairs. The first thing that you have to step 0. That is the step 0 that you have to want to analyze. Yes. First, make sure that the set of phones you intend to analyze phonetically similar. If they are grouped that is similar, and that is they are similar in terms of points of articulation and manner of articulation, and also they form suspicious pairs. And then you go to step one. Step one, look at the minimal pairs. If you find the minimal pairs in the data, that is, if it is yes, minimal pair, stop analyzing, because the pairs are different phonemes, and you have to mention that is number 12 and number 13 are, that is S, and in number 1, number 13, for example, are different phonemes. If not, if you don't find minimal pairs, go to overlapping distribution. If you find the overlapping if you don't find, if you find overlapping distribution, stop analyzing. It's a different phoneme. If not, you continue, and then you go into free variation. If you find the free variation, that is, if it is yes, you stop analyzing, because they are different allophones. If not, you continue complementary distribution. In complementary distribution, if you want to analyze, you have to set for the different allophones, and you have to do with the criteria of mark in order to say to have a basic phoneme or lexical phoneme or systemic phoneme and the derived ones. How to analyze the data analysis. Look at this one. For example, if you have that is S and Z, you have here set of suspicious pairs here. S, Z, L, R, E. This one, if we check S, Z occurs between A and N, between A and N, between in final position, in initial position, between N and. But you have, for example, and Z, for example, it is in initial position, it is in final position, etc. And then you have to look at the glossary. That is, for example, you have C-lam and Z-lam, number 6 and number 8. That is, they have the same, they are similar in all contexts except in one. C-lam in initial position and the in initial position. Therefore, and the meaning, C-lam means bite and Z-lam means tree. Therefore, 8, S and Z in 8 in examples 6 and 8 are different phonemes. Therefore, I stop analyzing. I cannot continue. I stop analyzing the data. If we take Lander, look at Lander. L here occurs in between two vowels, and it means how. It occurs between consonant and the here, between two vowels. Between two vowels, yes, and here in 12 and in 14. That is and le occurs in initial position, the same contact, but they are not similar. Therefore, they are in overlapping distribution. Here, 12 and 14, overlapping distribution. If we take E and A, look at this one. A, initial position, initial position, initial position, initial position, initial position, initial position, which means A, it occurs in initial position. E, look at this one, which means A, its occurrence is predictable in initial position. E occurs in final position. E occurs between two consonants. E occurs between two consonants in final position. Between sandl, between sandf, between zandl, between nan, r and between na and f, between w and s, between s and f. Therefore, it is frequent. This one I will use frequency because you don't have diacritics. It's not markedness. Therefore, I can say A and E. A is the basic E occurs in initial position, whereas E occurs in S-word position. Therefore, the basic phoneme is E because I use the frequency, is the most frequent. That is, its occurrence is not predictable, and therefore it is highly, wherever you go, you can find this between vowels, consonants at the beginning, at the end, etc. You cannot determine it is the highest, is the most frequent one. The most frequent one, therefore, I would say that E is the basic phoneme, whereas A and A, which is initial position, occurs in initial position, whereas E occurs in S-word position, and the one which occurs in S-word position is the basic phoneme. Therefore, I will write E as between slanted bars, whereas the other one are between square brackets. Look at this one, how to determine the data. I can use, that is, how to determine complementary distribution. You should look for the element that constitute the context which determine allophonic variation, which means we have to use to analyze, to write a formal notation of the data. And here two allophones, these are variable. And I will use this variable, are complementary distribution. And in order to determine the complementary distribution, you have to analyze the syntagmatic order of the element, which means sequence where they occur. Either, look at this one, I said before or after vowels, or before or after consonants, or between vowels, or between consonants. It depends. This is the environment which, that is, it helps you to detect to see the context, or to determine the context where the sound occurs. And here, this one you read it at home. This one, and this one we have already done it. Yes, writing phonemic rules. That is here how to write phonemic rules. That is the example that is Korean, etc. It is just an example. You read it at home for your own information. Here, how to write a phonemic rule. That is, you have here when two phones are in complementary distribution. Now, the only elements where you can write a rule is when the two phones are in complementary distribution, which means they are suspicious pairs and they have the same place of articulation. They are similar in points of articulation, and similar and points that they are similar in manner of articulation. And we want to capture generalization. That is, from data we can, that is, you can have a set of sounds, and we want from the sound to capture general data. That is, we can have one rule. And one rule, this is what we need. A rule is needed to capture phonological significant generalization. That is, redundancy is not accepted in a rule. And we can find a rule that captures all the elements in one data. And this one is a problematic. It's a real problem. That is, you have to be very attentive and also very cautious in order to capture this one. And you have to look at the detail of the detail, which means you have to observe in a detailed way. And here you have about the sound system of the language being studied. Recall that allophones are contextual phonetic realization of one basic phoneme, which means you have variants of the same basic phoneme, that if you find the one element, one sound, one phone, one allophone, where the other sound cannot occur, which means contextual phonetic realization, which means phonetic, that is the context which allows different pronunciation and makes them allophones of the basic phoneme, which occurs in elsewhere position, which is widely frequent. Is that clear? These are variables. That is, you have X, Y, Z, and X. That is, what I notice here, X is the basic phoneme because it is repeated. And here, X is in elsewhere position. The one which is repeated here, it's going to be the same phoneme, the basic phoneme. These are variables. And here, the phonetic, that is the arrow here, the arrow means that X is phonetically realized as Y. X is phonetically realized as Z. X is phonetically, which means Y, Z, and X are images or are allophones of the same basic phoneme, which is X. Yes? And the letters X are variables descending from the variant allophone. The arrow is read as is phonetically realized as. Substitutionary stand for the variables if we substitute this one with the exercise that we have already. That is, a P is realized as P aspirated, is realized as a P, is realized as a P. And then we have to go, that is, these are allophones. Therefore, a P is realized as a P aspirated, and then between square brackets, each one between square brackets. And then, that is, we have to set the placement, the environment. When do we have the aspirated? When it is, that is, this is the environment where P aspirated is, followed by vowel, and the vowel in not any kind of vowel. In monosyllabic word, that the vowel is pronounced or is realized, is pronounced as a P when it occurs between two consonants, and it's pronounced differently plain as a plain in all contexts, which is in elsewhere. A slant or diagonal bars is used to separate the variant from their environment. The context where, that is, this one must be used within slanted bars. And the revised version, we can have this one. Look at this one. I can read this one, this formal notation. You write a rule in formal notation, and underneath it, you have to use it to explain it in plain English. This formal notation can be read as follows. The basic phoneme is realized as an allophone P aspirated if and only if it occurs. This one, that bar, which means occur environment, that is occur before this one. This is the environment, occur before the vowel, which is plus stress. The P, the basic phoneme P, is realized as B when it occurs between two vowels or in intervocalic position. P, which is the basic phoneme, is realized as a plain P if it occurs in S-word position, which means in exclusive mutually context, in S-word position. Note that the expression S-word is the formalism suggests that the plain P has wider distribution, thus higher frequency than aspirated P and voice P. This fact is taken to be a criterion to claim that plain P is the basic original lexical sound, while the others are derived, each being restricted to one and only one environment. The basic sound is placed between slanted lines to indicate its phonemic status. The square brackets point to phonetic status. One rule, this one, the final. This one finally is the rule. That is P, which is, that is the basic phoneme, is written between slanted bars. It is realized as P aspirated if and only if occurs before a vowel, which is stressed. P, basic phoneme, is realized as if it occurs intervocalic position. P is realized as plain P if it occurs S-word position. And we stop here. Next week we will see the stress. And you start doing, you start doing the exercises. Is that clear?
Yes, Professor.
Any question? No questions? Do the exercises for next week, please, because we have to start syllable structure, and then you have to do the exercises. Exercises, if you send me the exercises, I'll send it to you. Not the whole class, but only the ones who have done the exercises. Those who haven't done the exercises, I will not send them the exercises, because I push you to work. Yes, have a nice week ahead. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Professor.
Bye-bye. Most welcome.